My journey with finances started when I found myself in $40,000 of debt. But with the help of a very unlikely Vermont janitor, I figured out how to turn my finances around. I'm going to share some of the practical steps of how I got out and have stayed out of debt, as well as some of the lessons that I learned through the process. And by sharing my story, I want to help you avoid making some of the same mistakes that I did, or if you're in a situation similar to mine right now, give you a little advice for learning to manage your money. If you want to listen in on more honest money talks like this and learn about how to achieve financial peace and freedom, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. So if it's the first time we're meeting, my name's Lorianne, and I didn't grow up learning about money management. I never took any finance classes or had anyone explain budgeting to me, let alone things like index funds or 401ks or retirement accounts. 401ks are a form of retirement account. But I didn't know any of that back then because my parents didn't talk much to me about money. Well, probably because they also didn't really know how to handle it. And growing up, money was really a source of stress in my household. I have vivid memories of listening to my parents fight in the kitchen about how to spend money and how they were going to get out of some financial trouble. I didn't get a lot of financial advice in my home, but I did get really lucky at a moment in the college cafeteria. I had just signed up for my first credit card. MasterCard was on campus offering free t-shirts if you signed up. So lo and behold, I walked out of there with my first ever credit card, having no idea how to properly use a credit card, and I feel so grateful that I bumped into a financially savvy friend in the cafeteria, and they offered this piece of advice that you should always pay off your credit card balance in full and only use it for the points. It was just casual, offhand remark that they knew, and I had known nothing about how to properly use a credit card. But I think that advice has probably really saved me in my life because no one else was going to explain to me how interest worked or what it meant if you only make the minimum payment on the bill and how hard it is to get out of credit card debt once you find yourself in it. So I'm grateful for that moment, but the truth is that was pure luck. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Now, after college, I thought I was doing the right things to build my wealth. I had gone to school, worked hard, gotten a good degree, gotten a good job. I was even working at getting my MBA, and I had a job teaching business accounting. I know that sounds ironic to understand business accounting, but not anything about personal finance, but those are two very different things. And while I wasn't spending money frivolously, I was still spending more money than I was making, and that leads to debt. And in my case, it led to tens of thousands of dollars of debt. So this created a lot of financial stress for me, and it started to really affect my relationship with my husband. I saw us falling into the same behavior patterns that I had seen in my own parents, and I didn't like feeling insecure and scared as a kid listening to my parents argue, and I definitely did not like being the one in the arguments as an adult. I had thought that the answer was, well, I just need to work harder, I need to get a raise, I need to earn more. I even started my own business on the side, but in the beginning that cost more money than it was earning me. And I felt like I was running on a treadmill, just like increasing the button, going faster and faster, but not actually getting anywhere. And I was totally burning myself out without any payoff, and I really didn't know how I was going to change things. And then I read an article about a man named Ronald Read, and yes, this is the Vermont janitor that I mentioned. Now, I never had the honor of meeting him. In fact, I only ever learned about him after he had passed away. You've probably never heard of him because he's never been on the cover of People magazine or Fortune's list of most influential people. He was a janitor, but somehow by the time he died, he had amassed an $8 million fortune. Now, I didn't know how much money Ronald Read made as a janitor, but I was pretty confident that in my corporate job, I was probably earning more than his salary. And that meant that the problem with my financial situation wasn't how much money I was making. It was how I was managing my finances. So for the first time, I started taking steps to take control over my money, my spending, and how I was managing it. I stopped ignoring my money problems. And it may seem like pushing financial issues to the back of your mind means that it won't really bother you and things will be fine. But turns out that's not the case. Just ignoring your money problems is like trying to get rid of a huge pile of trash that's in the middle of your living room by covering it with a sheet. You aren't actually fixing the problem. You're just temporarily hiding it from view, but sooner or later, your whole house is gonna start to stink. So pushing things aside doesn't improve anything, so you have to take reasonable and decisive action to address the underlying habits that are causing the problems. And if you aren't taking control of your money, ultimately it ends up taking control of you. So the first step for me was admitting that I had a problem I had to deal with, and I committed to actually dealing with it. I started to initiate conversations about money. Yes, I started actually talking about my situation. I started telling people about where I was at financially and where I wanted to be. And the strangest thing happened. People started to help me. They offered resources and advice and tips that they knew. They gave me encouragement or shared similar stories. And just by sharing, I was able to find this really supportive community in my current friend group. And more importantly, my husband and I, we also finally started talking about our money problems and how we wanted to manage finances as a couple. We agreed on our money goals and how much each of us could spend on something without consulting the other. In other words, we created some agreements for how we were going to manage money together. Instead of approaching our finances as just individuals with different expectations, and then getting frustrated when the other person didn't meet our unspoken expectations, we started to approach and manage our money as a team that was working towards the same goal. And this really helped. Now, as humans, I've noticed that we tend to gravitate towards the path of least resistance. There's a reason that we say we fell or we slipped into old habits. It's because they're so easy we do them without even trying to. It's really easy to put something on a credit card and promise yourself you'll find the money to pay it back later. Plus, it comes with this immediate feel-good dopamine spike when you buy yourself something. So I had to make a rule for myself that going into debt was just not an option anymore. Because I knew if it was an option, I would take it. So my husband and I, we worked together and figured out how to live within our means. We set up a budget that we knew we could stick to, and we agreed that we would never charge anything to a credit card unless we knew how we were going to pay it off in full before the bill was due. Another really important step I did was I invested in gaining financial literacy. I realized that you can't win the game of money if you don't understand the rules or the language that people are using when they talk about it. So instead of seeing financial literacy as a chore, I started to see it as a form of self-care. I wanted to be able to make informed decisions. I wanted to be able to map out a good, viable plan to get my finances back on track. And to do that, I had to learn. But fortunately, thanks to these changes, I was able to pay off that $40,000 of debt. And now I live debt-free and I collect money from investments every single month. Now, it took time to do that because I wasn't just making short-term fixes. I made lifestyle changes, things that I still use and implement today to help me amass and build wealth. Now, through that process and that journey, I learned a few things, and I'm going to share them with you. The first thing I learned is to ask for help. Nobody succeeds alone. Behind every successful person is someone who believed in them, encouraged them, or took a chance on them. And you may end up being really surprised, like I was, at how willing people are to help, or how many people you already know who can steer you in the right direction. Just keep verbalizing your goals and allow yourself to be surprised by how people may show up to help you. The second thing I learned was about budgeting and how budgeting brings freedom. I avoided a budget for so long because I thought, I don't want to live a restricted life, and it's not easy to tell yourself no. But when you're setting a budget, while it can feel restrictive, it turned out for me that was really not the case. Yes, maybe I said no to buying things that in that moment I wanted, But it turns out that learning how to live within the boundaries of your income is what allowed me to live boundlessly in the future. And it created for me a total feeling of peace, and that peace led to freedom. And the third thing I learned is that personal finance is not instinctual, and your instincts when it comes to money may not be the best guide. A lot of us grow up and we inherit what the people around us thought or said about money, and that might not be that well educated either. So we're running around not necessarily knowing what to do and then trusting instincts that maybe aren't guiding us in the right direction. It turns out personal finance, it's a little more science than it is art. It actually boils down to formulas. It's governed by some pretty simple rules that if you know them and understand them, you can follow them and have success. It's actually not mysterious. And so education really supported me, and I'm sure it can support you too in your pursuit of your financial goals. Ultimately, I was choosing to learn everything that I could about personal finance that helped me break out of debt and become a successful investor. So that belief in education is a big part of why I started Dow Janes, because I know that women with money have more choices and louder voices. I've personally experienced that as someone who went from living in debt and feeling like I was at the effect of life to someone who now lives in abundance and is able to exert my influence over life much more easily. And the only way to gain that understanding of money is by learning how to manage your own finances. So thank you for listening to my journey and what I've learned. I hope you found something in here helpful, or if there's someone in your life who you think that might find this helpful, that you pass it along. It's not always easy to talk openly and honestly about money, but I know that the more we do, the safer it becomes for other people to do that too. And it's really important to me that people know they're not alone in their financial situation. Honestly, you would be surprised when you start talking about this stuff how many people you already know can relate to the situation that you're in. So if this resonated with you, or if you want to hear more of my story about what happened after I learned how to save and invest money, if you're interested in that part of the journey, I talk a lot about that in our free webinar called How to Think Like an Investor. So I'll leave a link down below this video so you can check that out if you're interested as well. All right, thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.